Welcome back to the Top 10 Worst, where today we're navigating the seas of the Game Boy Color era. Released by Nintendo in 1998, this handheld wasn't just a refresh. It was a culinary revolution akin to the introduction of cilantro to the herb garden of global gaming. The Game Boy Color was the cilantro and the salsa of the handheld world. It wasn't there to blend in, it was there to stand out and bring new zest to the gaming experience. Armed with its vivid color display and enhanced game cartridges, it plucked gaming from the grayscale and sprinkled it with vibrant hues of innovation. It became the herby accompaniment to our digital feasts, offering a palette of genres from the hearty flavor of an RPG to the zingy tang of a platformer. However, as with all ingredients, not every use of cilantro is a culinary success, and similarly, not every Game Boy Color title hit the mark. Some games overused this herb without understanding its essence, resulting in a gaming aftertaste that was less than pleasant. These titles failed to blend the color and capabilities harmoniously, much like an overenthusiastic garnish of cilantro that ends up overshadowing a dish rather than enhancing it. In our top 10 worst Game Boy Color games rundown, we're peeling back the layers of these less renowned entries in the Game Boy Color's catalog. So come along as we embark on this retrospective journey, exploring how even the not-so-successful titles contribute to the Game Boy Color's iconic status. Stick around as we dissect the Game Boy Color's extensive library, picking out the games that, for better or worse, flavored the era. Number 10, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Diving into Buffy the Vampire Slayer for the Game Boy Color is a culinary disaster equivalent to a chef trying to make a gourmet dish using only cilantro stems. It's a bland, monotonous endeavor that leaves you questioning your life's choices. The game's graphics, while somewhat resembling the TV show's characters in its cutscenes, are generally lackluster, resembling early NES quality. The audio experience is as underwhelming as a dish seasoned with just one note of flavor, featuring only one repetitive generic electronic track throughout the entire game. We need you, Nerf Herder! The gameplay is painfully dull, much like endlessly chopping cilantro without the satisfaction of it ever enhancing a dish. The gameplay quickly becomes a tiresome routine of button mashing, like a chef mindlessly adding cilantro to every dish without thought or creativity. Number 9, FIFA 2000. Playing FIFA 2000 is like attending a grand banquet where cilantro is the star of every dish, but its use is heavy-handed and lacks creativity. Imagine a chef with a boundless love for cilantro, adding it to every meal with reckless abandon. This overuse of cilantro ultimately spoils each dish's unique flavor profile. The controls in FIFA 2000 are awkward and unresponsive, resembling the struggle of distinguishing between cilantro and its less flavorful cousin, coriander. This lack of precision in controls takes away from the potential richness of the gameplay. The players move across the field with a lack of grace and fluidity, reminiscent of a clumsy chef chopping cilantro without finesse. Moreover, the game's sound design, while maintaining the tradition of new age and techno beats, fails to add any significant auditory appeal to the experience, similar to a dish where cilantro's aroma is present, but not quite impactful. The game's attempt at simulation feels as far removed from the thrilling spirit of World Cup soccer as cilantro ice cream is from being a refreshing palate cleanser. Number 8, Toobin. Diving into the Game Boy Color's rendition of Toobin is like being promised a delectable cilantro-laden feast, but ending up with a dish where the herb is used so excessively that it drowns out all the other flavors. This game, intended to capture the essence of river tubing, ends up delivering an experience as underwhelming as a cilantro leaf left limp in the rain. The controls in Toobin are akin to handling wet cilantro stems, slippery and frustrating, making navigation through the game's courses as unenjoyable as finding a thick, unchopped cilantro stem in your meal. This lack of controlled precision detracts significantly from the gaming experience, much like too much cilantro can overwhelm a dish's intended flavors. The game does not capture the sense of freedom and relaxation one expects from a leisurely day on the river. Instead, it's as if you're force-fed a cilantro-heavy dish without any thought to balance or flavor harmony. Number 7, X-Men Mutant Academy. Exploring X-Men Mutant Academy for the Game Boy Color is like being promised a culinary journey through diverse cilantro-infused dishes. The character roster is like a well-stocked spice rack, full of potential with mutants like Cyclops, Wolverine, Storm, and iconic villains such as Magneto and Mystique. Each character, in theory, should have brought a unique flavor to the gameplay, akin to how cilantro adds a distinct taste to different dishes. However, the game's execution is akin to using cilantro in every dish, without considering how it blends with other ingredients. This results in a monotonous gameplay experience where the unique abilities of each mutant feel as undervalued as cilantro in a dish where it doesn't belong. Number 6, Towers, Lord Baniff's Deceit. Venturing into Towers, Lord Baniff's Deceit, is like being trapped in an endlessly confusing cilantro maze, where each turn brings more disappointment than the last. The game, much like a misguided culinary experiment with cilantro, attempts to weave complexity and challenge, but ends up creating a disheartening labyrinth that leaves players more desolate than inspired. You embark on a journey in the land of Towers, where the narrative is as uninspiring as a garden of wilting cilantro, failing to add any real flavor to the game. Graphically, the game presents a dungeon crawling experience that, while functional, becomes monotonous and repetitive, akin to a meal where cilantro is used in every bite without variation, or every game review. Number 5. Carmageddon. Delving into Carmageddon for the Game Boy Color is an experience that plunges you into a realm of despair, much like a chef who has lost all sense of taste, finding solace only in the aroma of cilantro. The game, akin to an overambitious dish ruined by a reckless overuse of cilantro, fails to deliver the thrill it promises. Imagine the dismay of expecting a zesty cilantro kick, only to be met with the blandness of wilted herbs. The graphics and sound fare no better, presenting a visual and auditory experience as disappointing as a meal where the vibrant green of fresh cilantro is replaced with a dull, lifeless garnish. Number 4. The Powerpuff Girls, Bad Mojo Jojo. Playing the Powerpuff Girls' Bad Mojo Jojo for the Game Boy Color is like being promised a vibrant cilantro feast, but ending up with a bland, unseasoned tofu dish. The game, based on the popular Cartoon Network series, falls dramatically short of expectations, delivering an experience as dull and uninspiring as a pesto sauce made entirely from cilantro stems. The gameplay is as simple and monotonous as sprinkling cilantro on every dish without thought to its ingredients or balance. Players navigate Blossom through levels, collecting trinkets and confronting Mojo's henchmen. The visual and auditory aspects of the game do little to lift the experience. The characters and levels are very basic, with Blossom and the Powerpuff Girls lacking detail. The lack of visual appeal can be compared to a dish where cilantro is used as a lackluster garnish, failing to enhance the overall presentation. Number 3. Shrek, Fairy Tale Freakdown. Playing Shrek, Fairy Tale Freakdown for the Game Boy Color is an experience so bleak, it feels like trudging through an endless, overgrown cilantro field in search of an exit. This 2D action fighting game, released in 2001, plunged players into a world where the joy of gameplay was as absent as a cilantro leaf in a bland soup. Each character was equipped with basic moves like punch, kick, and block, and 3 special moves. Critics panned the game, with reviews pointing out its lack of strategic design, depth, and interesting moves, and the absence of a 2-player mode. It was described as a handheld misery, a sentiment that resonates with anyone who's experienced the overwhelming disappointment of a dish where cilantro is promised but fails to deliver its own zing. Number 2. Titus the Fox. Titus the Fox is akin to navigating through an endlessly confusing and frustrating cilantro maze. The game, aiming to be a delightful kiddie platformer, fell short with its graphics being the only slightly redeeming factor. The visuals feature cut paper animation style against a static background. Even for a game targeted at children, Titus the Fox was criticized for its lack of challenge and overly simplistic mechanics. This was equivalent to a chef underestimating cilantro's potential and using it in the most basic and uninspired ways. Number 1. Men in Black, the series. I'm living in a constant state of dense fog that dims everything around me. Each day I wake up, the world seems less colorful than it did before. The joy, hope, and excitement I used to feel seem like distant memories, leaving me with an overwhelming emptiness and a sense of disconnection from everything around me. Things I once loved doing now feel like insurmountable tasks. I'm perpetually exhausted, but no amount of sleep or rest seems to help. It's like I'm walking through an endless tunnel with no light at the end, no sign of relief. Interacting with others has become incredibly hard. I often feel like I'm just going through the motions, devoid of any real emotional connection. Even surrounded by people, I feel an intense loneliness and isolation. My thoughts are relentlessly negative and self-critical, creating a hopeless narrative in my mind. Sometimes I feel so detached from reality that the world seems like an unchanging gray landscape, stripped of any joy or hope. The future looks so bleak and distant, and finding motivation or a sense of purpose seems impossible. I recognize these feelings as a symptom of what happens when anyone tries playing Men in Black the series for Game Boy Color. Quite possibly the worst game ever made, Men in Black the series is an experience so disheartening, it might make one yearn for the therapeutic qualities of cilantro. The gameplay is extremely basic and fails to capture any of the fun and excitement of the film or the show that inspired it. The levels lack distinct gameplay elements, leading to a repetitive gameplay that feels stale right from the start. The controls are frustratingly sluggish, making character movement a challenge and turning the gameplay into a tedious exercise of walk, stop, jump, and shoot. The game's graphics do little to redeem it, with aliens represented as misshapen sprites and backgrounds that are drab and unimaginative. The animated intros and cutscenes are a highlight, but they don't compensate for any of the horrible gameplay. Overall, Men in Black the series on the Game Boy Color has been criticized for its subpar gameplay, poor graphics, and lack of variety, leading to an overall rating of 27% on Game Rankings, which some might say isn't low enough. The game is described as a complete waste of potential, offering little in terms of enjoyment or engagement. Many have said that the game's lackluster performance can only be salvaged by the metaphorical cilantro of fond memories from the movies and TV series, a small comfort in the face of such a disappointing gaming experience.